The polished chrome of billion-dollar aircraft shimmered under the morning sun as an old pickup truck rolled onto the private runway at Westlake International Airport. The contrast alone was enough to spark laughter inside the glass-walled VIP terminal. Armani suits leaned forward. Rolex-wearing executives exchanged smug grins. This is the mechanic? Marcus Jennings stepped out of the truck, toolbox in hand, worn metal, scarred from years of actual labor, not polished meetings. The looks he received weren't subtle. Disbelief first, then mockery, then something uglier, dismissal. Is that really the expert they called for Mrs. Evans's jet? Richard Hastings remarked with an amused shake of his head, loud enough for his audience to enjoy. I thought we asked for the best technician in the state, not someone who looks like he patched up lawnmowers on the side of the highway. The others chuckled. The insult landed exactly where Hastings wanted, in front of witnesses. Marcus heard him clearly. He always did, but he didn't even pause. He just set down his tools, signed the maintenance log, and began walking toward the sleek Gulfstream G6 Femifans parked like a jewel at the far end of the runway. He was here to fix a problem their best technicians couldn't even diagnose, and the clock was ticking. Mr. Jennings, the runway supervisor said stiffly, keeping a full arm's length away, as if competence were contagious. You have 1 hour. If you don't solve it, corporate is calling in the Atlanta team. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Inside the terminal, they watched him like people watch a man attempt the impossible, just so they can laugh when he fails. Hastings folded his arms across his suit jacket, smirking. Unbelievable. They send this guy for a $65 million aircraft. Then a voice sliced through the room like a blade. Let him work. The executives turned. Alexandra Evans, CEO, owner of the jet. And the last person Hastings wanted overhearing his commentary. She didn't look at him. She looked only at Marcus, studied him, measured him. How much time do you need? She asked from the tarmac, voice crisp, command-level calm. That depends on the problem, Marcus replied. No hesitation. No deference. You have 1 hour, she said, checking a watch worth more than his truck. Impress me. She walked back toward the terminal, and the executives retreated behind glass, reassured by air conditioning and their echo chamber of arrogance. Marcus opened the primary access panel and instantly saw what they had missed. Not a minor glitch, not an electrical short. A lethal cascade failure in the pressurization system. If this jet had taken off, it wouldn't have made it past cruising altitude. Cabin depressurization. Instant catastrophe. They had no idea he had just saved their lives. 30 minutes later, it was finished. He didn't grandstand, didn't announce anything. He just closed the panel, wiped his hands with a worn cloth, and began packing up his tools. No applause, no thanks. Excellence, when it comes from the wrong skin tone, is treated like obligation. That was when Alexandra came back. Alone this time. How long would it have taken them to catch it? She asked. They wouldn't have, Marcus answered. The jet would have gone down before anyone figured it out. Silence, heavy, calculated. Walk with me, she said. The executives watching from inside stiffened. Hastings' face tightened. Something was wrong. And for the first time, he knew he wasn't controlling the narrative. What he didn't know? This wasn't a mechanic being escorted. This was a reckoning walking straight toward him. The room fell silent for half a second. Not out of respect, but out of shock that he still hadn't walked away. The suits behind the mahogany desk were already exchanging amused glances, like the boardroom had turned into a comedy show. Sir, the receptionist leaned toward the executive, whispering just loud enough for Marcus to hear. He keeps insisting without an appointment. He insists? The executive repeated, as if the word itself was an insult. This place is not a service station. He can't just show up and demand access. The group chuckled again. Marcus swallowed, still calm. Just tell her I'm here. She's expecting me. This time the man laughed openly, a polished, expensive laugh that belonged to someone used to power and never to accountability. She? Expecting you? He stood up, straightened his tie, and walked closer, his polished shoes echoing. On the marble floor, as if every step were a reminder of status. You must be confused, my friend. Women at this level don't take meetings in parking lot pickup trucks. He didn't even hide the way he dragged his eyes across Marcus's boots, jeans, and worn jacket, like he was reading a resume of failure. The other executives leaned back, entertained. That's the problem with social media these days, another chimed in. Every delivery guy thinks he has access. Marcus didn't react. His expression remained still, the kind of stillness that comes from self-control, not weakness. Then the first executive leaned in, lowering his voice into a cold mockery. Let me make this easy for you. The woman you're claiming to know is in a board meeting right now with billion-dollar stakeholders, people with actual credentials. So before I call security, turn around, get back in your truck, and go wherever people like you belong. The phrase "people like you" hung in the air like a slap. Another executive exhaled sharply through his nose. A soft, polished version of a laugh. And if she was expecting you, he added smugly, she wouldn't make you wait in the lobby. That was it. The perfect assumption. The arrogance. The hierarchy they believed was permanent. And so the reveal didn't come slowly. It detonated. Because the frosted glass conference room door behind them swung open and the atmosphere in the lobby flipped instantly, a woman in a tailored navy suit stepped out. Presence sharp, posture commanding, expression carved from authority. The boardroom followed her with their eyes. Not because she was elegant, but because she was the one everyone else in this building answered to. She looked straight past the suits and locked onto Marcus. Why is my guest still standing in the lobby? Her voice was controlled steel, not loud, but lethal. The executives froze. A couple of them turned slowly, like their bodies were trying to catch up to a reality their egos couldn't process. Then she said it. Mr. Carter, I apologize for the disrespect. They didn't realize who you are. Not Mr. Marcus. Not, sir. Mr. Carter. Their heads snapped toward him, the name hitting like a courtroom verdict. The first executive's color drained. The receptionist's jaw parted. And then she finished it. The line that detonated the entire illusion of status they had built over him. This is the majority shareholder of this company. Silence. Not lobby silence, fear silence. They hadn't just disrespected a visitor. They had just humiliated their boss. The shock in the lobby didn't fade. It deepened. The executives didn't move. Couldn't. Their faces looked like marble cracking under pressure. The woman, Alexandra, didn't even look at them. She walked straight to Marcus, her heels clicking in a slow, deliberate rhythm that sounded nothing like the panicked heartbeat behind her. Come with me, she said softly, not as an order, but as respect reserved for equals. She didn't gesture for him to follow. She walked beside him. That single receptionist instinctively stood from her chair, than any outburst as if rising for royalty in a courtroom. Too late, too clumsy. One of the suits tried to speak, but his voice cracked halfway out of his throat. Miss Hale, She finally turned to face them. Not angry. Worse. Cold. Before you say another word, she told him, remember that every camera in this lobby is recording. The man froze. You could physically feel the regret filling the room. She continued, each word precise. You weren't rude to a stranger. You were rude to ownership. And you didn't even bother to ask before judging. The other exec tried to intervene, face red, pride collapsing. We had no idea. That is exactly the problem, she cut in. Her tone didn't rise. It tightened. You didn't ask. You assumed. The suits lowered their eyes like schoolboys, waiting for a punishment they couldn't outrun. Marcus stayed quiet. Not a smirk, not a hint of pettiness. Power never needs noise. He simply looked at them. And for the first time, they were the ones being evaluated. Alexandra placed a hand lightly toward the hallway. Mr. Carter, your meeting room is ready. They will no longer be needed. They, not he, not this one. They, all of them dismissed in a single pronoun. She led Marcus through the glass. Double doors. The Ones the lobby believed he would never be allowed to cross, into the private executive wing reserved for the upper circle of decision-makers. The hallway staff straightened instantly when they saw him walk beside her. They knew. At the end of the corridor was a private boardroom. Not where she worked, where he presided. The glass door recognized his credentials and opened automatically. The table was already prepared, digital portfolio queued, legal team waiting remotely. He didn't sit immediately. He turned back just slightly, his voice calm, deliberate, and unhurried. "Before we start," he said to her, "clean the lobby." She understood instantly. "Not janitors. Personnel." "Yes," she replied. When they re-entered after the meeting, the suits were gone. Not relocated. Not reassigned. Escorted out. Escorted downward. The receptionist avoided eye contact, but she wasn't fired. She had been misled by their behavior, not her own. Marcus knew the difference between arrogance and imitation. The real rot always starts higher. As they passed back toward the elevator, Alexandra spoke quietly. "You could have humiliated them louder. You chose not to." Marcus shrugged faintly. "Their reputation will do the job for me. Real power doesn't argue. It doesn't scream. It remembers." When they reached the private garage, she paused beside his truck. "You know," she said, "I don't think I've ever seen them look that terrified." "Fear," Marcus replied, "isn't the punishment. The mirror is." He opened the door of the truck, paused, and glanced toward the skyline beyond the tinted glass. "You don't teach a lesson by shouting," he added. "You teach a lesson by letting people see how wrong they were, while you stay exactly who you are." She smiled, not in admiration but in recognition. This wasn't the first time he had walked into a room underestimated. It certainly wouldn't be the last. What they never understood until too late was simple. You don't need to dress like power. When you already own the building, power works in. And the next morning, when the board received the official memo, the headline read, "Effective. Immediately. Restructuring of executive personnel for conduct unbecoming of representation of corporate leadership." But the real verdict wasn't on paper. It was the memory burned into everyone who witnessed the lobby moment.